And we welcome now to the EIB network, Liz Cheney. This is, second, third time you've been with us, but this is momentous. Liz, your life
Rush, how are you?
I'm fine. Your life is going to change dramatically. You are running for the United States Senate. Now, I hate to do this. It's hardly ever that I admit ignorance, but I have been really off the grid this weekend. And so some of my questions you may have answered countless times. I apologize.
Well, good for you for being off the grid. I always advise that.
It is kind of sweet. It is kind of refreshing. And I didn't get back in touch with anything until Sunday afternoon. What is primary reason you're doing this? I mean, this is not something you have to do. It's obviously a passion. What do you hope to accomplish if you win?
I'm in the race, Rush, because I'm very concerned, deeply concerned about what's happening in Washington and what it means for the state of Wyoming. When you look across the board at the encroachment of the federal government into every aspect of our lives, whether it is, the massive debt, $17 trillion and growing, whether it's the Environmental Protection Agency and the complete war on coal, war on fossil fuels, the EPA's attack on our ag industries. This president, I believe, is the most radical man who's ever inhabited the Oval Office. And I think that we've gotten to a point in the country where, it's a moment where we all have to decide: are we going to continue, business as usual in Washington? Are we going to go along to get along here? Or are we going to stand and fight? Are we going to say no more? Are we going to say it's not obstructionism?
Now, when you say
this president's policies, it's patriotism.
When you say go along to get along, are you talking about the Republicans in Washington?
I think that you have had some in Washington who have not taken the approach that we've got to stand and fight. They've sort of taken the approach of business as usual. Let's continue to work through kind of the seniority system, and let's continue to look for ways that we can compromise. And I put compromise in quotes because everybody believes in compromise for the good of the nation. But you come to a point where compromise is capitulation. And, here in Wyoming, one of the things that people feel very proud of is the Code of the West. And the very last line of the Code of the West is know when to draw the line. And I think we've gotten to the point where we've got to draw the line. We've got to say, look, compromising with this president's radical agenda is only going to result in a loss of the freedoms and the values and the very nature of the nation that we all love so much.
When you look at Washington and look at the current crop, let's keep it to the Senate since that's where your hopeful next stop is. There's a lot of that. There are a lot of Republicans, at least it appears, who have chosen the route of compromising with the Democrats or with the president because it's the path of least resistance or because they think that's what the American people really want. You can go issue by issue by issue, healthcare, immigration, and a number of things to illustrate this, and it's really frustrating. And I heard you say, before I went off the grid, one of the things that you are going to bring to Washington is this is the end of deal making. No more deals. What did you mean?
I think the problem is when you're dealing with opponents like those we have today, this president and his liberal allies in Congress, that, compromise for the sake of compromise with them leads us to the place we find ourselves today, where we've got Obamacare, where the president is really trying to kill the coal industry, where the president's trying to raise taxes. He is raising taxes on everybody, where he's trying to nationalize a sixth of the economy with Obamacare. And you have to be able to say, all right, look, I'll go this far and no farther. And as a conservative, as a Republican, I mean, you know better than most, Rush, that when you stand up and you take a stand and you take the fight to the president, you're going to get attacked and criticized. And most people, I suppose, don't like that. It's not pleasant. But, I believe strongly that you've got to have the courage of your convictions, and you've got to be able to lead. It's not enough just to say, I'm going to, put my head down and vote. You've got to be able to bring other people around to see, our way of thinking, to see our vision for the future, because we're not going to win against this president if we say, let's depend on the media to show the American people all the negative things about him. It's just not going to work. We have to mobilize others on our side. We got to stand up for what we believe in.
Who in the world in the Republican Party is saying, well, let's let the media show the way about Obama? Who in the world thinks the media is Obama, and Obama is the media? Liz, you come from Republican Party royalty, if I can use that phrase. I mean, your family, your dad, your mom. I mean, you're yourself. You're from Republican family royalty. The Republican Party today, I look at certain elements of its leadership, and I'm at a loss to understand it. I see, and a lot of civilians see, that the greatest opportunity we've ever had to contrast what we think and who we are with what is, not what theoretically might be if they win. They did win 5 years ago, and this is what they are, and this is what we're going to get. And too many Republicans seem, at least on the onside, to simply caved to this, to have decided there's no point and nothing to be gained in opposing any of it. And I just can't understand it. I look at Washington today and feel as distant from it as I ever have.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, I would say, first of all, I'm a proud constitutional conservative. And I too, am very worried. I share your concerns, Rush, about our party. I share your concerns. When I hear leaders of the Republican Party saying we need to move to the left, we need to moderate, that is a recipe for disaster. What we need are people who can stand up and explain why we believe what we believe, why we believe in a limited government and low taxes and a strong national defense, and why, we believe in the free enterprise system, because it's raised more people out of poverty than any system that's ever existed. It's the only system that's going to create opportunity for all. We believe fundamentally in the Constitution and its inviolability, and we'll fight to defend, Second Amendment rights and freedom of speech and freedom of religion and all of those things that are under assault from this president. So I think the Republican Party today has got a lot of very big problems, and I think you've got a lot of people out there who completely understandably are more willing to identify themselves as conservatives than as Republicans. And, it just seems to me that the path forward here is electing strong constitutional conservatives who are going to be faithful to the Constitution and who are going to remember every single day that they work for the people who elected them, not people who are going to go back to Washington and try to figure out how they can, make the leadership in Washington happy with their votes and, how they can sort of not make waves and not rock the boat. The situation is simply too grave for us not to stand and fight this fight. If we care about the future, if we care about our kids, if we care about our freedom, we will fight the fight. We'll fight it here and now.
How did it happen? I mean, I must be honest and say I'm shocked, particularly at the Senate, since that's where you're headed. I'm shocked at much of what I hear from not just the Senate leadership, but from many Republicans in the Senate. I don't understand what's happened in 5 years. I don't, and maybe it's been happening slowly and surely in ways that we haven't seen, but I literally, I know what has happened. I mean, I know that, as you say, there might be fear of being called out. There might be fear of being called a racist, sexist, bigot. There might be fear of the White House coming after you, fear of being primaried, fear of whatever. But I have never seen the Republican Party this informed by it, this inspired, motivated by fear. I'm searching, as people ask me, what has happened? I don't know if it's the consultants advising candidates that are telling them this is what you have to do to win the independents. I don't know if it's consultants telling candidates, look, now I know that there's a war on conservatives in Washington everywhere, Republican Party, Democrat Party, and you're up against that, by the way, doing what you're doing. But it is a mind-boggling thing when you stop and think of all Democrat administrations to compromise with and agree with this one. This is the least likely for any of this to happen. So people are scratching their heads. It doesn't make sense to them. And this gives birth and gives rise to all these mindless conspiracy theories when there doesn't appear to be a rational explanation why the president has no opposition, essentially, in Washington.
I think there's a couple things going on, Rush. I think, first of all, it just happens way too often that when people get back to Washington, they want to be liked by everybody else in Washington. They want to be praised by people in Washington. It becomes sort of a club, and you want to be in the club. That certainly isn't something that compels me or drives me at all. And I think, secondly, the president is a formidable communicator. And too many Republicans look at his skills and his talent, and they say, we just simply can't compete. And so they cede the playing field. Or they tell themselves, we're going to compete in another way. We're just going to work really hard in another way, but we're not going to fight the fight with him because, my gosh, we might get bloodied. And I think that the future of the nation, the future of the state of Wyoming is simply too important for that. And I certainly, came to the conclusion that I could not sit by the sidelines any longer in the face of the threats, to the very principles on which our nation was founded.
By the way, Mike Enzi, current seat holder, is, I think, a friend of your father's. They fished together. How's that going down between your family and the Enzis?
I have a lot of respect for Mike. I'm not sure. I think they may have fished together once. I think that, I can tell you that I respect his 18 years of service to the state. And it's not personal. This is very much about policy and substance in the future. And I believe it's time for a new generation. It's time for somebody who will be a strong voice in Washington for Wyoming. So it's certainly not personal. It's about the future and about not having the luxury to sit by and wait.
Well, Liz, if I may editorialize here, I don't want to embarrass you, but I want to tell the audience here that I've known you for many, many years, and throughout the entire time I've known you, you haven't changed. Your conservatism has been consistent and solid, and in fact, it may have even gotten, if I can use the term, stronger. Your commitment to it may have even increased, and not that it was ever in doubt, but I mean, I can cite numerous times you've been on television as a guest, and you have shown everybody how to do it. For example, one of the favorite techniques that you perfected was simply refusing to accept the premise of a typical question a Republican would get. You showed the way. And if you do seek this office and if you succeed in getting it, everybody's going to have their eyes on you and hoping and praying that whatever happens to Republicans in that town does not happen to you. Because people like you are needed there.
Well, thank you, Rush. I appreciate that. And I have to say that, the admiration that I have for you and for what you've done and for the strength that you've had under a pretty intense barrage at times, not to wither and to stand up for your principles is very, very high. And I appreciate that a lot. And you can count on the fact that I'm not going to get back there, and forget who sent me and forget who I work for and the principles on which the nation was founded and that we've got to fight for.
Well, I appreciate your call. I appreciate the time that you've given us here today. And we need. Let's see. We've got Ted Cruz and a couple of. We need about 95 more of you. And we might at least 51 of you. And then we'd be talking.
Well, that's we got a lot of good young people coming up in the party, and I think we're gonna give President Obama a fight here and not let him take this country away from the principles on which we were founded.
You've mentioned Wyoming. I don't know how many times in our chat here, and I did. I think one of the problems is that people get elected, they go to Washington, and they want to be liked by the culture there rather than remaining liked and appreciated in their home states or districts. Don't forget that. You seem to have that nailed down. That's crucial. I mean, your state is heavily involved in fracking and coal and energy, and the president's targeted everything that keeps that state viable.
Well, we could have an economic renaissance in this country if the president were willing to, allow people in states like Wyoming to be able to get access to the resources that we have here. Really, we could be energy independent. We could have an economic renaissance. But instead, leases for drilling on federal lands in the Rocky Mountains have reduced 70% in the last couple of years. And he's declared a war across the board on fossil fuels. It makes no sense for the nation, for our energy needs. Certainly, it kills thousands of jobs here in Wyoming, and you know, it's just time for it to end. It's time for people to stand up and back him off of these policies, and get people across the nation mobilized in order to back him off these policies.
Well, good luck, Liz, and thanks again.
Thank you, Rush.
Very much. Liz Cheney seeking the Senate seat from Wyoming, currently held by Mike Enzi.